everybody, I'm Lauren Delisa Coleman, and you are inside another episode of the Filmio interview series. I have with me James Latimer now, who is going to talk with us about his short called Kata.
空手を通して誰もがその力の最大限を引き出すことができる。
I'm just really excited for you to be able to share about this film with our audience. As I watched it, I just kind of felt like it looks like somebody, like, somebody, when you have a shoe shine and you buff something until it's beautiful and bright.
Right.
Your film just looks like that, and it's amazing. So first, I guess, start, if you don't mind, by telling our audience a little bit about what the film is about, right? And then tell me about the technique, and we can get all into it from there.
Sure. So Kata is a short documentary about a 13-year-old karate champion who, for the last 6 years in a row, has never lost. And that's the first time in Japanese history that this prodigy has kind of emerged. And it's a kind of a portrait to uncover not just what makes her so great in her skill set, but the mentality behind it, what makes a 13-year-old champion be a champion of that level.
Mm-hmm. And what drew you to this story to be able to tell it, in this manner? Obviously, like you said, it's amazing and a feat, but how did you come about kind of creating this short around the topic?
So this is the third short of I wouldn't call it a series, but just the third documentary
kind of related.
That I've made. First one about a modern day female samurai, the second one about a primal Japanese dancer, and the third one I was like, okay, I'm really getting a hang and flow of this kind of hybrid documentary medium of shooting something, a very authentic story, but in a very cinematic stylized way. And I was like, what could be next? And then thinking about the Tokyo Olympics, I heard that karate, and specifically kata, the form of karate, was going to be in the Olympics for the first time. I was like, wow, I actually don't know anything about form of karate. Like, we've all watched the Karate Kid of Cobra Kai. There's so much about karate even in Western culture, but why would you just do form of karate? What is special about that? And I kind of wanted to, even for myself, to understand that, and then hopefully to communicate the essence and the philosophy and the beauty of that to another audience. And so it was going to be, first I wanted to pick up on an actual Olympic athlete, somebody that was actually going to be in the Olympics. But then when we did our research, we found this 13-year-old karate prodigy that's actually too young to be in the Olympics. But something about her was just amazing. She was actually in Sia's music video Alive. That's also how I described 130 million views on YouTube. So she's already kind of like a child star. And now that she's 13, she was like 6 or 7 then. I was curious how she developed and where she's at now. So
interesting. When we were off camera, we were talking about the fact that you've lived in Tokyo for 10 years. So this story kind of came to you from being immersed in the culture, or had you always followed Japanese culture even prior to your living there?
Yeah, so since I was a kid, I was always into, like a lot of younger people are, into video games and anime and Japanese food, and there's just kind of like a mystique about Japan that always allured me in some way. The respect, the humility, the subtlety. Nothing is super direct, super in your face. Everything is very subtly communicated, and I guess naturally within my personality I really connected to that. And so moving to Japan and wanting to as a storyteller, I wanted to kind of embrace that which I found so inspiring as a kid, but then with my foreign perspective on Japan, looking from the outside in, things that even Japanese people don't necessarily think about, and shed a light to them, and also to communicate it with the West.
How interesting. Tell me about, I guess, bringing the team together for this particular project, and again, how you decided on just the look and the feel. The reds are so red, the greens are so green. It's really just beautiful and kind of hypnotic, without just knowing anything about the story at all.
Right. And that's another thing, like for me growing up and playing certain like video games, there's a series called Final Fantasy, which for me was I got so lost in these video game worlds that were so bright and vibrant and vivid, and they merged a lot of different things between like Western culture and Japanese. They weren't just Japanese. They took a lot of medieval European culture or Pacific Islander culture and just mishmashed everything together and made it just this really alluring thing for me. And so thinking about Kata, or just even my work generally, working with long-time collaborators like Michael Erickson, the DP for Kata, we really wanted to have that kind of otherworldly, you're really entering her mind with these like visual metaphors of, instead of shooting her in a dojo, getting ready for a competition, have that meditative state of her entering a bamboo forest and going on that journey with her. We wanted to make it really bright and vivid, and to really take the audience along that kind of spiritual journey as well as a narrative journey.
True, because I mean, you know, you've said obviously that it's a documentary, but when you're looking at it, you have to remind yourself of that consistently, right? That was the intent, was it not? Because it's just, you think that, well, wait, this girl doesn't exist. Oh no, wait, she does. Oh wait, she does it. You know, as you're looking at this,
right.
It's really fascinating. Have your other works kind of spoken to this technique as well?
Exactly. This is definitely the most where I've pushed the production value the highest. Has definitely been with Kata. But the previous films almost like tests to see where I can find that line, and with Kata it was like, okay, let's really push the production value. Let's get an amazing location. Let's really light this thing. The day to night transition where everything is all smoky. We've got these fire baskets in the background. There's so much atmosphere that we built to create this like really vivid world of being in her mind.
Interesting. How long did it take you, I guess, from, you know, kind of beginning to, okay, now somebody can see this? How long was that process?
Probably 6 months.
Oh, so not really as long as I thought it might be for how it looks.
Right. I was kind of in a rush. I was assuming that there was going to be Tokyo Olympics in 2020. And so it was 2019 in November when we first went to interview Mahiro, the lead, and thinking, okay, we've really got to get this done. We shot it in just 2 days, and then we had the post-production process, which took quite a while, and I worked with an amazing composer to really bring everything to life. But the tricky thing was like, oh, the Olympics is delayed, and then the pandemic happened, and then it was just trying to find a way for it to kind
see
of
the light of day.
Yeah.
Although obviously, just because it's amazing, it works, you know, in any day. There's not, there's like, she's just, I don't know, it's like Simone Biles is Simone Biles any day of the year, right? So that was good that you didn't peg it specifically, you know, to the Olympics after all.
Exactly.
What about now budget on this? How did you either raise it, and what type of budget range did you require to be able to shoot this type of film?
Right, so I'd made a couple of shorts, like I mentioned before, that were very modest, maybe just 2 or 3 K US, including post-production, just offered, like begging my friends, please help me with this, and single locations, really try to keep it stripped down as simple as possible. And they did pretty well. Got a good reception, but I was like, I really want to show people now that I'm ready for like a bigger production, that I can do something on a certain level. And so I was like, okay, nobody's going to give me money for this thing. So how can I call favors, but then how can I make this as big as possible without, and to get those people, as many people on board as possible. So that we had like a robot arm on a track. And I reached out to that company, and they normally do these product shots where you have this repeatable actions, like you have someone holding a phone and the camera kind of goes over and gets all these interesting kind of movement shots. And I was like, okay, that's cool in a studio over a table, but how about we bring that into a bamboo forest, and we have Mahiro doing like backhands and punches, and have like her transition from being a schoolgirl to a karate champion, using that repeatable robot arm action. And I think just by pitching interesting ideas, things that robot would normally cost a lot of money every day, they were like, cool, yeah. They're like, how much money have you got? And I go, nothing. But they're like, this is actually great promotion for us to use this robot in the future on other productions in a similar way.
So you had to get like
So
super creative.
yeah, and so luckily just by having a really interesting kind of pitch, I managed to just get a lot of people's support to make it happen. And also the location, the bamboo forest, it's a friend of a friend who owned a temple, and it was just, there's just a lot of freebies involved.
So when you say 6 months, that doesn't include all the wonderful like negotiation and all that.
Yeah.
That was actually before.
Yeah, exactly.
So how long would you say all that took then?
I'd say 2 months either side as well.
So that's really not bad.
Yeah.
You are like a pretty cool negotiator. Everybody call James after this to help him, ask him to help you figure out things. But that's really remarkable, I think, and in another culture,
Right.
in another country.
Yeah, because there's a benefit to there's advantages and disadvantages of not being Japanese. One of them is like that you're not Japanese, and they kind of like, are you going to mess things up? Do you understand culturally what's going on here? And they're kind of wary. And other times they're like, whoa, a foreigner actually cares about this
culture.
and they're super excited to share that with what they think is going to be an international audience. So it's playing into
Right.
where it can help. And,
How interesting.
yeah.
So, as we're talking about this, the challenges of doing something mega with no money, what other advice might you have for filmmakers aside from, negotiate and barter as much as you can? But what else maybe came up for you that if you had the opportunity to, give advice to yourself before, now having gone through it, what would you share maybe?
Right, because one of the things I've learned from previous projects was I was kind of aiming too big. Like with the resources that I had, I was like, okay, we're going to have 10 locations, we're going to shoot this, and we're going to have so many cuts and so many things. And those kind of projects never really came well, and I was always dissatisfied with the result of them. So it was really just stripping things down. And with Kata, it really is just one location. She enters a temple, cuts into a bamboo forest, and the whole piece takes part in this one location, but we make it feel like multiple locations through how we shoot it, how we light it, how we block her movement through this location. So it's really just sometimes not limiting yourself creatively with what, like, oh, we don't have money, don't let this go crazy.
Right.
But thinking, okay, with what do we actually have, what are the resources that we have available to us around us?
So looking at it like that as opposed to lack. I like that a lot because that's what I was going to ask you next is did you feel like you kind of not cheated yourself, but you had to rein yourself in, right? And so to be able to maybe walk that fine line of, okay, overreaching, I'm not going to be happy with the end result, but also I want to do something that speaks to my soul.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's how you looked at it instead. I love that idea.
Definitely.
Right? Of what you have. Making the most of that.
Exactly. And the network around me, the composer was actually a childhood hero of mine, and I was actually just going to his concerts as a fan. And he plays in kind of smaller venues, like 300-400 people. But he'd always noticed this foreigner in the back, apparently. And one day he just came out and was like, so who are you? Kind of like, who are you? And I said, oh, I'm actually a massive fan. And he's like, okay, let's go drinking sometime. And then we went drinking, and it was just super chill. I was like, actually, I'm working on a film, and I'd love to work with you. And he's like, sure. When do you want to start working together? I was like, wow, if you just ask, like, what is actually possible, because people that you really respect can seem really intimidating and far away, but they can actually be closer to you than you might expect.
And what about working with the subject herself? Was that challenging? Was she open to it? Did you have to hunt her down? Like, how did that kind of happen?
Right. I mean, everyone says don't work with animals and kids, right? But
that is the stereotype, isn't it? Yeah.
But she's honestly, I mean, she's a 6-year in a row national champion for a reason. She was so easy to work with, so open, just like, hey, wakarimashita, just like very, just like almost military-like in terms of her discipline.
But what about getting to her? Did you have to get through all her people and everything to finally get to her, or what?
They were quite easygoing. Like I reached out to her coach in her dojo that she goes to, and they're used to like a lot of media going to them because she is kind of like an upcoming star in Japan. And so the tricky thing for me wasn't really necessarily reaching out to her, but it's to try and ask like probing questions, like try and ask the more difficult questions that where like the real story, like where the conflict is, because they want to just tell me like, okay, she does this, this is her routine, this is what she does when she's not doing karate and things like that. But like when I was probing at her relationship with her brother, or what the conflicts that she have, where does she have times where she feels like she maybe doesn't want to continue karate anymore, things like that. They were like, oh, nobody's asked us these kind of questions before. And so it took time to get that to open up a little bit.
Well, that's interesting. So then obviously the sports media there is quite different from here.
Yeah, very different.
Sounds like more invasive here. So I guess that was both like maybe a benefit, but also a barrier at the same time, or a challenge.
Yeah,
right?
It's a challenge, yeah. And so, but in the end, everybody was just so nice and couldn't be more accommodating. And
Very cool.
They saw the potential, I think, as well. Like, knowing that I really wanted to stylize everything, and they were a little bit concerned about, okay, this is a documentary, but you're really going heavy on the visual side. But knowing that I was doing it always in mind of like what her real story is, and making sure that this is an authentic telling of her story. So,
What did she say afterwards when she saw the final product?
she was kind of blown away, I think.
Yeah.
And she was a little embarrassed as well, because one of the things I really wanted to do is like show her as a normal everyday girl beyond just like the karate prodigy. So the way that she starts kind of dancing to like K-pop and ends in that same way just helps to ground her. But she was really embarrassed. Like, she could do the karate stuff 100 times and never complain. But when I asked her to like, okay, now I want you to dance this music, she was like, how, like, what?
Right.
It was so awkward for her.
Because also it's a more formal culture too,
Yeah.
right? So asking an American athlete to do something like that, it's like, yeah, okay, why not? Yeah.
So that was probably the biggest challenge, actually. And she felt a little bit embarrassed by it, but I think when she saw it in context at the end, she saw how it actually really helped to like get the audience to connect to her more.
Yeah. Interesting. So what's next for you? And I'm assuming it will have to do with Japanese culture or Japan, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much based in Japan. And,
right.
But for me, it's like, how can I make more films that kind of cross that barrier? And that's why I'm so excited about Kata being selected at Tribeca. It's a Japanese film in Japanese, but it's really crossing borders and connecting to international audiences. And that's what I want to continue to do on longer form content. This hybrid doc thing that I've kind of got going, I'd love to make something longer.
Yeah.
There's also like more straight narrative ideas that I have, films that could be set in Japan, get people to kind of, because I mean, the world kind of needs more like understanding of different cultures. I think a lot of the fear and a lot of the problems that we have currently is through just not understanding.
Lack of really contact.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm just hoping from my being based in Japan, I can help to have some of that information kind of cross over.
That's great, and I love how you say this hybrid thing that I have going, this hybrid docu thing going. Very, very, technical term. I don't know how. We're gonna have to like figure out some kind of term for that, right? But you guys will understand, when you see the film, because it's, I don't know. It's beautiful and trippy and everything all at the same time, and it is a documentary, and I had not really seen, that type of approach before. So congratulations, and I think I was told, I think earlier today, that there were maybe 7,200 short entries into Tribeca. So no joke to be able to be here,
right.
And it's great that you could come physically, given everything that's been going on. So really, anything else you'd like to add?
No, just super excited and just feel proud and privileged that we could share this film with everybody, and I hope this journey continues and there's much more to come.
Great. James, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So everybody, you have been watching another episode of the Filmio interview series, and we can't wait to bring you the next. This is Lauren Delisa Coleman.